Everybody's accepting people here.
Okay. Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Um, just so that we're all clear with each other, we're two block behind right now. Wednesday is Erev Yontif, so we're not learning. Yom Kippur, we're not learning either. But I did look forward to the Gemaras and the Yuds, and almost all of them are blot and half worthy. Almost all of them. So, and we'll also have Erev Yontifs, but I'm hoping by the end of Sukkot we'll be able to catch up. Mirz Hashem. What does that mean? Do an hour, yeah. Assuming the dapim are not as impossible as the prior dapim, then I agree with you. Yeah, it's I have already made numerous poor assumptions about Zevachim. How hard could psukim be? That was one very bad assumption that I made. So Mirz Hashem, we will catch up in due time. I feel bad for our Sukkot guests who might have some different expectations, but ma'afshar lasot, we're behind. Speaking of which, we're on Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis, about 10 lines down, and we're starting with the din of Shimon Achi Azariah. So if you look back on Daf Beis, Shimon Achi Azariah had an interesting din. He said, Shachtan l'shem gavoa mehen ksherim. If you do a shchita, let's say your korban is kodshim kalim, and you do a shchita for kodshim kodshem, that's kasher, but l'shem namuch mehen psulin. So he taught this particular din, and actually he's disagreeing with the Tanna Kama. And we'll see a little bit more about this soon. But let's get into the belly of the beast here as to what he's holding. Shimon Achi Azariah Omer, that's what the two dots says. And let's remember, if you do your korban for a higher purpose, good to go. For a lower purpose, not good to go. Rav Ashi Masni Mishmei Rav Yochanan, Rav Acha Berei Rava Masni Mishmei Rav Yanai. Both Rav Yanai and Rav Yochanan, they all both had the same svara. My time of the Shimon Achi Azariah. What's the reason why he holds that elevating a korban works, but lowering a korban does not work? The Amar Korah, because the pasuk says, "V'lo yichalalu as kodshe b'nei Yisrael es asher yarimu l'Hashem." All right, so lo yichalalu, we're not going to ruin a korban. Asher yarimu, that you elevate. So here's the drasha: Bimuram mehem, when it's ram, when you raise it up, then ein mischal, then it doesn't get ruined. But benamuch mehen, but if you're lowering a korban, just as an example, from kodshe kodshim to kodshim kalim, so then the Gemara says mischal. Okay, very good. We understand his marimakom. Says the Gemara, it's a great marimakom, except that it's been used already, and you can't use the same marimakom twice. Says the Gemara, a third of the way down, 2 lines before the very wide lines. You can't use this pasuk of V'lo yichalalu to teach us that only with elevating a korban is it kosher, but with making it namuch that it's not kosher. We need that for a din that Shmuel taught us, and it's a very important fundamental din. It's not some ancillary halacha. What is the halacha that we learn from Shmuel? First long line. On Yod Aleph Amud Beis, Amar Shmuel. Minayin lo cheles had tevel shu b'misa. That's not stam. We need a pasuk to teach us that if a person eats tevel, that they're chayiv misa. And of course, the pasuk that Shmuel uses is our pasuk, Shnei Amar, as the pasuk says, "V'lo yichalalu as kodshe b'nei Yisrael asher eis asher yarimu l'Hashem." And what is it that we're talking about where you're chayiv misa? Be'asidim litrom akasim v'daber, for something that in the future you're going to be torn, namely it's teva. So for now, that food is going to be something that you're chayiv for. In Cain, says the Gemara, no. The Gemara says, don't worry. You don't have to question the source of Shimon Achi Azariah. Why not? Because in Cain, if it were to be that all the pasuk wanted to teach us was the din of Shmuel, that ochel esat tevel, that he's chayiv misa, in Cain lichtov kra asher hormu, maya asher yarimu. So there we see a deviation in the conjugation of this word. Could have been simpler. Therefore, shmami not tarte. I don't know the grammar as to why it is that hormu would have been reasonable for singular, yarimu would have been singular for would have been appropriate for the other way. I don't know why, but that's what the Gemara says, is that there was a deviation in the language, and that brings us to the 2 dots, a third of the way down in Yud Aleph Amud Beis. By Reb Zera, this din of Shimon Achi Azariah, that when we elevate it and we say that it's kosher, so is that elevation by Reb Zera, is it ksherin ve'ein miratzin? Is it that when it's kosher by taking kodshim kalim and making it kodshei kodshim, is it that it's kosher but the ein miratze, like the Tanakama would have said in our Mishnah, v'chi pligi, and therefore the only machlokes is bechada pali. The only question is when you go from higher kedusha to lower kedusha. The Tanakama didn't make this distinction. The Tanakama on Daf Beis says that a korban that's made shelo b'kavana is kosher but ve'enu miratze. And here, the taich that Shimon Achi Azariah is making is not all korbanos are like that. Because if you take a korban and you lower its status, it's not kosher at all. So the machlokas Tanakama and Reb Shimon Achi Azariah certainly is in one direction, which is if you lower the status of a korban and you do it shelo lishma. Shimon Achi Azariah says nothing doing. You're not allowed to do that. So that's certainly part of it. So do we say he agrees with ksherin ve'ein meratzin, but b'chi palig b'chada palig, he's only arguing on that one nakuda of lowering the status of a korban, that it should be against the Tanakama, it should be pasul. Odilma ksherin umeratzin v'tarti pligi. And really, maybe there's a double machlokas between the Tanakama and Shimon Achi Azariah. Number one is that even if you were to elevate a korban and do it shelo lishma, that it would be kosher. Even if you would do that, it's ksherin umeratzin, machlokas against the Tanakama. And machlokas number two against the Tanakama is if you take a korban and lower its status, it's not kosher at all, whereas the Tanakama would have said that it is. Says the Gemara, 5 lines into the wide lines. Which one is it? Amar Abaye v'yitema Reb Zrika Toshma. We have a beautiful example, and this beautiful example is also from Daf Beis. This is the example that follows Achi Azariah, Shimon Achi Azariah. So let's learn it over here. The Gemara says, what's the case? The Gemara says, HaBechor b'hamaiser sheshachtan l'shem shlamim. We have a bechor. We have the korban for a bechor, and we have a korban for meiser. That's shachtan l'shem shlamim. The halacha is ksherim. However, shlamim sheshachtan l'shem bechor o l'shem meiser psulim. Okay, so says the Gemara, v'isal kadaitach ksherim umeratzen. If you want to say that he holds that it's ksherim umeratzen, well, we have a problem. The example given is a bechor. Is a bechor a bar ritzui? Bechor is not for kapara. It's not for ritzui. So therefore, ala ksherin ve'en meratzen. Therefore, it must be that Shimon Achi Azariah holds ksherin ve'en meratzen, and therefore, if we were to be elevating a korban, let's say from kodshim kalim to kodshei kodshim, so then we'd say ksherin ve'en meratzen just like the Tanakama, and they'd still only argue on one matter, which is the matter of bringing a korban to a lower status. But says the Gemara, this does not work. Umi the seifa ksherin me'ein meratzin, reisha nami ksherin meratzin. That was again all part of the first answer. That yes, it all works. Mi the area, the Gemara says, wait 1 second. How can you even say this? Hakid isa v'hakid isa. You're extracting a piece of information from something that doesn't deserve extracting a piece of information. The fact that a bechor is not a bar ritzui, the fact that a bechor doesn't have ritzui, doesn't mean that he holds ksherin ve'in meratzen. The korban is not, you're not learning from the right source. We don't know anything from that korban about ein meratzen. And therefore the Gemara says, we can't bring a proof from there. Elamai kamash malon. Why then, if you can't learn from the case of Bechor and Meiser because they're not bar ritzui, why did he bring those cases? If you want to say it's because of Gavoa v'namuch kamash malon, if you want to say that it was to teach us that if you bring a korban to a higher purpose from kodshim kalim to kodshei kodshim, then it would work, but not the other way. That Tanina already, we learned that already. We're halfway down on Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Tanina, Ketzad, where did we learn this? Kodshei kodshim sheshachtam l'shem kodshim kalim v'chule. We already saw this then. It says the Gemara, no. Ma'udatema kodshei kodshim v'kodshim kalim udika gvo v'namuch. Maybe we would have said, this is an odd habamina, but maybe we would have said that only between kodshim kalim and kodshei kodshim would we have said that if it's an elevated status, it's kosher, and if it's a lower status, it's not kosher. Aval kalim v'kalim, but two korbanos within kodshim kalim, maybe we would have said no, that there is no gradations and that lowering or raising the kedusha won't matter. Hanami Tanina, the Gemara says we already know that too, because Shlamim Kodman is Habechor, Ibnei Shein Tunin Matan Arba Usmicha, Unisachin, Utnufa Chazivashok. So we already learned that too. So therefore, it's really unclear as to why Shimon Achi Azariah brought this example of the Bechor and the Meiser at all. The Gemara responds, no, really ha-ikr. Really, our case was the ikr to teach us that even Kachim Kalim have higher and lower statuses, such that if the status was raised, we would have brought the korban, but if a status was lowered, we would not. That's true. The ikr is our case. Hahi, the example of the brisa that we just saw of the shlamim kodman and sabechor, that's agararadis, but it was just brought derech agav. It really wasn't the ikr limud, and therefore we are good to go. That brings us to a new mishnah, a little bit more than halfway down on Yod Aleph Amud Beis. Now we're going to be getting a little bit more into the weeds about a korban pesach. As I'm sure you'll recall, our Mishnah had a very unique thing, that if you try and shech the korban on Yud Dalid, Shelo Lishma, we said that and achatas are a zero. What is the appropriate time to do the korban on Yud Dalid? So the pasuk in Chumash says it should be on Yud Dalid bein ha'arbaim. So that sounds like the afternoon. So let's see what our Mishnah has to say about the scope of time on Yud Dalid. HaPesach sheshachto shachris be'arba'asar. That's not bein ha'arbaim. If it was shechted by in the morning, 9 a.m., you go to the Beis HaMikdash, you shecht your korban Pesach early, on the morning of the 14th, and you do so shelo lishmo, adding in another factor, right? Just to make things more complicated. This is why in learning this Masechta, it's very helpful to have charts that I did not make you. But if I would have been, if I would have had more time, I would have done it. So here the case is you're bringing a korban Pesach, you're bringing it on Yud Dalid, but not Bein Ha'arbaim, and you're bringing it shelo lishmo. You're bringing it for the sake of an ola, of a shlamim, of a chatas, whatever the case may be. Now, had it been that it was the proper zman, it would have been a zero, because bringing a korban pesach shelo lishma is a zero. We know that already. So what is the din over here? Do we look at the fact that it is being done l'shem korban pesach on Yud Dalid and say, well, it's Yud Dalid, so it's kind of the zman, and therefore it should be puzzle, like anything else brought bein ha'arbaim would be puzzle? Or no, do we say it's not bein ha'arbaim? This is a machlokes tanoim. Rabbi Yoshua machshir. Rabbi Yoshua says this is kosher, and look what he says over here. Ki'ilu nishchat b'shlosha asar. The fact that it's not bein ha'arbaim and it's in the morning on Yud Daled, you might as well have done it in July. It's not. It's just a korban pesach shelo lishmo, but because it was shelo bizmano, it's not puzzle. The only time the korban pesach is puzzle shelo lishmo is when it's done bein ha'arbaim, and the morning of the 14th might as well be the 13th or the 12th or July. It doesn't matter. Mar Cheshvan, do whatever you want. It'll be kosher as a shlamim, but it will not be kosher as a korban pesach, obviously. However, Ben Beseira Posel, and this is a difficult sheet that we're going to spend a lot of time on him today on the Amud Aleph to try and figure out what it is that Ben Beseira is saying. Ben Beseira's Posel, Ki'ilu Nishchad Ben Ha'arbaim. Very difficult shita. He holds that even though the korban pesach was shechted not in its zman, it was shechted at 9 a.m., the first few hours of the day on Yud Daled, that's not called bein ha'arbaim. Nevertheless, what does he say? That this is going to be puzzle. When do we say a korban pesach is puzzle when it's shelo lishma? Bismano. So for some reason, he holds that it's still bismano, even though it's not bein ha'arbaim. And listen to his language. No. If you bring a korban pesach at 9 a.m. on Yud Daled, Rabbi Yoshua says, yeah, your korban pesach is a zero, but you have a shlamim. No problem. Ben Beseira says, no, this is the zman of korban pesach. And therefore, if you bring a korban pesach shelo lishma, it's puzzle, like the basic din of our Mishnah. What's odd about his shita is that the pasuk says the zman is not the morning, it's bein ha'arbaim. Nevertheless, he seems to have extended what the appropriate zman of korban pesach is to even include the morning, to say it's the zman, it's Yud Daled, it's the zman. And look at his language here, ki'ilu nishchad bein ha'arbaim. What does that even mean? Ki'ilu nishchad bein ha'arbaim. That's like saying, I said Shema at noon for Mariv. It's Ki'ilu, it's nighttime. It's a very difficult shita. Let me turn that camera to you and say it again. Say it again with your face on the screen. Unbelievable. Yeah, I don't know. It's like doing shofar the night before. It's Ki'ilu, it's tomorrow. It's Ki'ilu.
Not shy, not
Yeah,
directly
but it's like
before and
Where do you make the pool then? Anytime in the month of Nisan? Like, why is the more, right?
well, we wouldn't have said that. We
No,
would have
we
said
said that.
we would have said Yudalit. It's Yudalit.
It's-
Yudalit is it?
it's also-
But we're very halachic and we're very time-oriented people. You can't daven before X. You can't daven after X. You can't daven. It's the zman of the korban. So if the zman of the korban is bein,
What? Why not go further?
why not go further?
Go home.
Yeah. But this answer is just so weird. Not to be rude to Ben Beseira, he has obviously we'll see he has a beautiful svara, but on the face of it, it seems to be that he has taken the Zman of Bein Ha'arbaim and he got super flexible with it. He's like, yeah, no, even in the morning is fine. And the language is also weird. Ki'ilu nishchad Bein Ha'arbaim. That's even weirder. The Gemara is going to ask on why he used the language of Ki'ilu, and we'll see that maybe he only used it because Rabbi Yoshua used it. And really, it's more glad. But nevertheless, this is the machlokas we see in our Mishnah. Let's review. If the Korban Pesach was shechted on the morning of the 14th, Rabbi Yoshua is like, yeah, not Zman Pesach. You're good to go. That's a shlomim. But Ben Beseira is like, I'm sorry, it's your Daled. Your Daled is the day of the Korban, and it's Ki'ilu Nishchad Bein Ha'arbaim. Omar Shimon ben Azai. Shimon ben Azai says, Mekubal animi pi shivim v'shnayim zaken. He says, I have on good faith from 72 Zakenim. B'yom sheo shivo es Rebbe Lazar ben Azariah b'yeshiva. On the day that Rebbe Lazar ben Azariah became the Rosh HaYeshiva, shekol hazvachim hane'echolin, a word added in. Any korbanos that are edible. What korbanos are not edible? An ola. So let's now that's what he's excluding. Any edible korban, shenizbechu shelo lishman, ksherin ela shelo alu lebaylim l'shum chova. This sounds a lot like our Mishnah, except that he removed ola from the equation. We would have said that an ola that was brought shelo lishma would have been a shlamim. He doesn't hold that way. He holds. Who are we talking about? We're talking about Shimon ben Azai. That for any shchita that's edible, that was nizbechu shelo lishma, they're kosher. Ela shelo alu lebaylim mishum chova, with the exception of chutz mina pesach u'mina chatas, and the Mishnah explicitly calls out his shita. Or what he was doing, it was saying that the ola is like the chatas and the pesach, which is that it's a zero. V'lo hodu lo chachamim. The chachamim pashut did not agree with him. That brings us to the open of our Gemara, 3/4 of the way down on Yud Aleph Amud Beis. Oh, sorry. Amar Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar says, Amar Rabbi Oshaya. And this just makes Ben Beseira so much harder. Machshir Hoya Ben Beseira. Remember, our Mishnah said that he was posel in our Mishnah. But he was machshir in the following case. Bepesach sheshachto shachris bar basar lishmo. The kula yom azmanehu. Now Ben Beseira is impossible to understand. Because in our Mishnah, he said that, in our Mishnah, the case was Shelo Lishmo, and we said Shelo Lishmo is oh no, sorry. No. This makes perfect sense. Yeah, sorry.
The whole day is this month.
The whole day is this month, correct.
But it was Luther was
Shelo Lishmo.
But he's considered.
Correct. Yeah, so he's Machshir. Machshir hay ben Beseira, but Pesach sheshachto shachris. Korban Pesach was shechted at 9 a.m. Verba, yeah. Same kasha. Correct. I'm confusing a later part of the Gemara. Sorry. Thank you for clarifying. So it says the Gemara, Dekula Yom Azmanehu, because he clearly held that the 14th was the appropriate time. Okay, why does it say Bein Ha'arbaim? We'll have to figure that out. We'll deal with that in the Gemara. Umay Ke'ilu, if Ben Beseira is so categorical that Yud Daled, even not Bein Ha'arbaim, is the Zman of Korban Pesach, why did he say in the Mishnah that it's ki'ilu nishchat beinu arbaim? It's an odd language. So says the Gemara, Aidi do Amar Rabbi Yeshua ki'ilu, Amar ihunami ki'ilu. So Ihachi, if this is true, says the Gemara, that Rabbi Yehuda, that Ben Beseira holds the way that he holds, Adem miflagi b'shelo lishmo, why did you bring the case in the Mishnah of lo lishma? You should have brought the case of lishma. Because either way, he still holds that mourning is considered the appropriate zman. He still would have argued against Yoshua even if it wasn't Shelo Lishma. So why was the Mishnah presenting the case of Shelo Lishma? And the Gemara correctly points out, if the Mishnah had articulated, had said that the machlokas wasn't only in a case of Lishma, I might have made the following diuk. Havamina aval b'shelo lishmo modi Rabbi Yoshua leben Beseira, that maybe Rabbi Yoshua would have agreed to Ben Beseira. Namely, maybe there wasn't a machlokes in the shelo lishmo case, ho'el miksaso ra'ui, kamash malan, that there's still a machlokes even b'shelo lishmo. So now we can go back to our Mishnah. And I saw some faces in the room that were like, oh, did you just add in shelo lishmo? You didn't need to do that. No, we needed to do that, because otherwise we would have misunderstood the applicability of the machlokas of Rabbi Yoshua and Ben Beseira. They argue in both cases. They argue in both cases because they both are party line to their own shitas, which is Yud Dalid is appropriate zman for Korban Pesach. That's Ben Beseira. Masha'enkin, Rabbi Yoshua listens to the pasuk. Again, it sounds terrible to say it that way. We just don't understand Ben Beseira, but Rabbi Yoshua is a stickler, and the pasuk says Ben Arbaim, Yud Dalid Ben Arbaim. What? Yeah. Really, the truth is the chart was unnecessary because, as we now know, the machlokas applies in both cases. But it still would have been nice. If only the Maggid Shir would have invested in his people,
I didn't say that.
I know. It was my guilt talking. I only say those things during Seres Meitshuva, though. Says the Gemara, listen, Ben Beseira, v'haksi, Ben Arbaim. I mean, you at the end of the day, you gotta face the music. The pasuk doesn't say what you're saying. You're saying that all day is eligible for a korban pesach. No, it's not. It says Ben Arbaim.
I'm just asking something about. When notions of korban pesach say logistically, you have to start early. Not everything okay. You've touched on something that fascinates me, right? The Gemara Maseches talks about the process. There was no more efficient process anywhere.
They still were everything made her by
Anywhere.
Yeah.
In and out. They close this door, they do their thing, they open the other side.
In order to make sure it happens.
You have to learn that Gemara. Unbelievable.
I've learned it. I don't remember it. I'm just letting you know.
They shot so many that they were up to their knees in the water. So it wasn't like it was a small. The most efficient.
I mean, it was done.
It was wildly fascinating.
Yeah. The only offset is that the Korban Pesach was done b'chabura, so it wasn't one per person. But let's say it was one for 5 people, 10 people.
5 families.
Even if it's 5 families, it's a lot of Klal Yisrael. So let's see what the answer is.
Nothing was
It
has like a number that they had 1 year.
was 1.2 million, I think. I remember this. It's outrageous.
It's outrageous.
Right.
So now let's see how Ben Beseira answers up. He does answer up in a way that's meaningful for his shita, but not in a way that solves all the problems that you're talking about of just a mass of logistics. He says, "V'aksiv bein harbaim, Amar Ula berei de Rabbi Loi bein shnei aravim." It's between the 2 evenings, which means it's all day long. Which is why Ben Beseira looks at the Korban Pesach differently than Rabbi Yoshua. By the way, this feels so much better than what we started with, which is like, how did he get here? Yeah, he was a logistics person.
we don't wrong.
You're definitely not wrong. You're definitely not wrong. But it is beautiful. People have their personalities, and Stan's thinking about the Korban Pesach. He's like, do they have an early slot? You know, there's different kinds of Jews out there. The procrastinators are going to get there running. Yeah. You know those people who always come late to Mincha. You know, those are the Jews who are trying to sneak it in before the sun sets, you know. So says the Gemara, wait one sec. Tamid dichsiba bein harabayim. Hachanami de kula yom kasher. And we know that we have different korbanos. We have Tamid shel shachar and Tamid shel bein harabayim, which means morning hours, and afternoon hours, which means by definition, afternoon hours are not morning hours, right? That's what it has to be. So says the Gemara that case is different. Hasam by the Tamid midichsiv esakeves ha'echad ta'aseh boker nichlal de bein ha'arbaim mamish. There you're dealing with two korbanos, and because we're contrasting the morning korban against bein ha'arbaim, there bein ha'arbaim taka does mean afternoon. But in our case, where we only have one korban, bein ha'arbaim means bein ha'aravim. I could relearn the psukim. Maybe baboker means that yes, I have to bring one in the morning, but maybe the other one is bein ha'arbaim the whole day, bein ha'arbaim, the way Ben Beseira understood Korban Pesach. Says the Gemara, no, echad baboker, v'lo shnayim baboker. No, you can't learn bein ha'arbaim that way. Yeah, it's very meduyak in the psukim that way. Yeah, it was nice. It's very meduyik in the psukim is that when it says that you have to bring one in the morning, by definition you can't bring two, which means bein ha'arbaim can't be the whole day. It can only be the afternoon. Fine. But 4 lines from the bottom, what about Neros? Dichsiv bein ha'arbaim. The pasuk says, "Uvaha'alos aharones haneros bein ha'arbaim yaktirenon." Hachanami dekula yom kasher. Perhaps we should say over here, if you're going to argue that bein ha'arbaim by Korban Pesach means the whole day, Neros, there's no 2 sets of Neros. We can't use the Korban Tamid argument, so it sounds like the whole day. Shiny Hasam. Dichsiv, there it says, Me erev ad boker. And how do we this sounds exactly like what we would want it to sound like. But says the Gemara, no, Vitanya, Me erev ad boker, what do those words mean? Ten la midasa, shete dolekes ve'oleches me erev ad boker. That language of bein ha'arbaim, that's not what it means. It means the afternoon. And the language that we use of erev ad boker is only to teach us that there has to be a volume of liquid in there to last the whole night. But bein ha'arbaim only means the afternoon. It means when you light it in the afternoon, it has to last until morning. Davar acher, ein lecha avoda kshera me'erev ad boker ela zu bilbad, which is, okay, fine. That's another thing about Neros, is that it's only kosher if you start it at night and it lasts until the morning. What about the Ktores? D'chsiv ba bein ha'arbaim. It's actually the same pasuk. Yaktirena Ktores tamid lifnei Hashem l'dorosechem, and that's also bein ha'arbaim. So says the Gemara, hachanami dekuli yom kasher. Maybe we should say over there that this Ktores of the afternoon should be brought at all points, just like we wanted to say by the Korban Pesach, like Ben Beseira wanted to say. Says the Gemara, shiny Ktores, the iskish l'neiros. Nope, it's very similar to Ner Zertak in the same pasuk, so I could understand why we would say that. Whatever svara led us to believe that Ktores, that Neiros, can only be in the afternoon, we would have to say the same halacha by Ktores. So says the Gemara, Hasam nami ksiv sham tizbach es pesach ba'erev. There also, the pasuk says, Ki im ela makom asher yivchar Hashem Elokecha l'shakein shemo sham tizbaches ha-pesach ba'erev. So there, hasam nami ksiv sham tizbaches ha-pesach ba'erev. And if that's true, says the Gemara, so then it's not okay in the morning. Even if Ben Beseira, you did great on the pshat of bein ha'arbaim. But at the end of the day, we have another pasuk that compounds and, in fact, makes irrelevant the first pasuk. Why say bein ha'arbaim? If the pasuk that we have in Shemos Chavtes Lametes says that it has to be done, not that pasuk. Sorry, which pasuk is it? Oh, sorry, it's Dvarim Tes Zayin Vav, where it says Sham Tizbaches HaPesach Ba'arev Kvo HaShemesh. So says the Gemara, no, that's there to teach you a different din. And this brings us back to Maseches Brachos. That's talking about prioritizing things when you're late. Titania. Ye'uchar davar shene'emar bo ba'erev ubein ha'arbaim ledavar she'lo ne'emar bo ela bein ha'arbaim bilvad. What do we do if you didn't bring your korban pesach, but now it's the time for the korban tamid shel bein ha'arbaim? Which one goes first? So the Gemara here says it's better to delay the one that says ba'erev and bein ha'arbaim, which is the korban pesach, which we just learned. That it's better to make that one later and do the tamid first. And in fact, we have a precedent for this, which we're familiar with because this has happened to me before, where for whatever reason I didn't daven musaf on a day when musaf is shaykh. But once you get to Zman Mincha, Mincha goes first and then Musaf. Asks the Gemara incredulously, which we will respond in kind. Had it been, says the Gemara, that you shechted the Korban Pesach in the morning, we would have said Givaldik, this is the right time. And now that it becomes the Zman for Mincha, we delay. How can that be? Says the Gemara. Yeah, that's exactly what we have in Maseches Brachos. The Gemara says, and we'll see it here also, Deha Rabbi Yochanan, halacha, mispalel shel mincha, ve'achar kach mispalel shel musafin. Beautiful. So now we see clear that the reason why it says that we need to do the Korban Pesach at night is not because the whole day isn't the Zman according to Ben Beseira. The whole day is the Zman according to Ben Beseira. Ben Arbaim is Ben Shnei Aravim. The only reason we had the double language of Ben Arbaim and Erev was to teach us that once you hit the Zman of the Korban Tamid Shel Ben Arbaim, the Korban Tamid comes first, and then they continue bringing the Korbanos Shel Pesach. So just logistics, right? We were talking about logistics earlier. Korban Pesach all morning long according to Ben Beseira. The second you hit Ben Arbaim, pause, bring the Korban Tamid, and then go back. Then you go back. Why? Because double language of Ben Harbaim and Erev. The whole thing's a zero. You would still bring the Korban Tamid first, I presume.
Sure.
But there is no morning by him, meaning the morning there.
You just bring it the Tamid first and then bring.
Yeah, your afternoon starts with the Korban Tamid Shel Ben Harbaim. And then you just plow through 1.2 million Korbanos.
Exhausting.
Yeah, it's a long day. You're like, is that the mishmar that I want? You know, the Kohanim are like, yes, I want it. Kind of, you know.
They raced for it.
Yeah. That's true, they did. They were very holy Jews.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't add up. You can't do 1,200,000 in one day.
It's unbelievable.
It's impossible.
It's not, yeah, it's one afternoon.
You mean you can't?
It's one afternoon and Shkia's not.
And even according to Ben Beseira, let's say that we're close to we're close to an equinox day right now. So it's approximately a 12-hour day. That's 100,000 an hour. That's a lot. If you do the math, that's like a ridiculous amount per minute. You know, it's 100 per minute. No, 1,000 per minute.
That's giving a whole day.
100 per hour. I mean,
And that's the whole day.
Continuously.
It's continuous. I mean, they're just.
So fascinating.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm so
Lo yodea. Okay, we got to continue because we have 9 minutes left here. Says the Gemara, "Ubein harbaim dechsiv gabek Torres v'neros lamali." According to Ben Beseira, this is a little bit of a technical question, but why is it that we had ubein harbaim both by Torres and by neros? In other words, if the default is not like our case, then I don't need that language because we had it already in other places. Rashi, ubein harbaim dechsiv gabek Torres v'neros lamali. Hol umine lo habe mashmalan bein harbaim ma mishum boilan kro achrina lefrushe. We needed other psukim by bein harbaim for neros to teach that to us. That's what the Gemara said at the bottom of the previous page. So why do we need that? That's question one against the approach of how we understood Ben Beseira. The Ode, and furthermore, and here we have a little bit of a correction. V'od Tanya, Heishiv Rebbe Tachas Ben Beseira L'divrei Rebbe Yoshua. Rebbe gave an answer to Rebbe Yoshua. Let's look back in our Mishnah in Yud Aleph from a base. Rabbi Yoshua was of the opinion that if a korban Pesach was brought on the morning of Yodalet Shelo Lishmo, he was machshir. So what does Rebbe say back to him? Lo, that's not correct. Imamris b'shlosha asar she'ein mikzaso roi, tomar be'arba asar she'mikzaso roi. Even if you want to say that you're not yet Yotze, the Korban Pesach, but the day is still a better day. Difficult svara, but that's what Rabbi holds. Rabbi holds that 13 has no shaykhis at all, and Yudalad Afal Pi that he holds Bein Arbaim is Bein Arbaim afternoon, even though he holds that way. But at least the day has a little bit of applicability. The Im Isa, and we need Rashi here. The Im Isa, de Ben Beseira, Shachris Mechasher Lishmo, which was what we said in our Gemara in the name of Reb Oshaya. If you want to say, according to Ben Beseira, that if the korban was done on the morning of Yodalad Lishmo, so Kulo Roi Lishmo, so let's look back in the Gemara. So then, Kulo Roi, and therefore, the opinion of Rebbe Lazar ben Oshaya at the open of the Gemara can't be correct. So let's think this through. What is he saying? If what we see over here is that Tomar Be'arbasar Shemikza, how does this work? Lo, what did Rebbe say to Rabbi Yoshua? Imamers Bishlosh Asar She'ein Mikzaso Roi, Tomar Be'arbasar Shemikzaso Roi. So Rebbe's pushing back on Rabbi Yoshua and says, how could you be machshir? Hooray, the day has some applicability to it. Ve'im Isa, that it should have been kosher lishmo, so then kulo ra'oi lishmo. What does Rashi mean? Ve'im Isa de ben Beseira shachris mechasher lishmo. Ve'im Isa de ben Beseira shachris mechasher lishmo, because that was what the Gemara said in the name of Rabbi Oshaya, which we all said was l'shitaso, te kula yomaz manehu. What does that have to do with Rabbi Yoshua? And what did I think this meant when I was preparing? Ve'od, Heshiv Rabbi Tachas ben Beseira l'divrei Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Yoshua, how could you be machshir? Imamris b'shlosha asar she'en mikzaso roi, tomar be'arba asar she'mikzaso roi, that only part of that day is roi. Then the Gemara says, Ve'im Isa, if it's true that Ben Beseira was mechasher lishmo on the morning of the 14th, kulo ra'oihu. Kulo ra'oi lishmo. What?
Right, according to Ben Beseira, the whole day is right.
I think the question is that Rebbe defined the day as mikzas ra'oi.
Which makes sense, right?
So that means Rebbe is the question on, it's Rebbe. Because Rebbe holds that the day is mikzas roi. If he's pushing against Ben Beseira, how does Rebbe look at that day? The day is only mikzas roi. But if you're Ben Beseira, now you're arguing with Rebbe, you've got a problem. So that's another kasha on him. Because Rebbe holds the day is only mikzas roi, because at least it's shaykh to the day, but it's not actually how we understand Bein Harba. So he's against Rebbe. So he's against Rebbe. Good. I think that's the question. So that's why we are, yeah. That's it. That's what I'm looking at right now. Toso the Tam Tov Imkain my Parach Rebbe Yoshua. Yeah, that's what. If you look at the end of Tosfos there, he says about the Rabbi Oshaya, who was the one who said that Ben Beseira held that doing it lishma on the 14th was okay. De'eno tov so latam tov. He doesn't have a good svara, Rebbe Oshaya. Imkain my parech Rebbe the Rebbe Yoshua. What was the whole question of Rebbe by saying that it's mikzas roi? No. If he's representing what would have been Ben Beseira, he should have said kulo roi. So we're assuming that therefore there's this rift between Rebbe and Ben Beseira. So the Gemara says a third of the way down, Ela Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Posel haya Ben Beseira. Really, Ben Beseira pasoled the Pesach shechto barbasar shachris bein lishmo, bein shelo lishmo. Hoel umikzaso roi. So now we pivoted and we said it has to be that Ben Beseira was wrong in saying that the whole day was Roi, even though we just went through the whole Ben Harbaim discussion. It must be that Rebbe is right and Ben Beseira has to follow in suit. And therefore it must be the case that both Lishmo and Shelo Lishmo are puzzle in the morning. They're both puzzle. What'd you say?
He said Ben Beseira was wrong, but he's saying
No, Rabbi Shaya's understanding of Ben Beseira is wrong. Rabbi Shaya's understanding, who said that in the morning Lishma is kosher, that he pushes back on. And he says that they would both be Bein Lishmo, Bein Shelo Lishmo, that they would all be puzzle. And it's mixas. It's just because it's close. It's close. But he agrees it's not exactly the same. Megadech bo Rabbi Abo. Rabbi Abo was very unhappy with Rav Yochanan's response. Im kain, if that's true, Pesach kosher leben beseira hechi mishkachas la. How could you ever earmark a korban Pesach in a way that's kosher timing-wise? Now, not even the shechita. We're only talking about whether or not the afrasha was considered kosher. We wouldn't have thought that this would have been a problem. But even the afrasha is a problem. If it were to have been separated right now, what does right now mean? Right now is the case of our Mishnah. That's what Rashi says. Dichui me'ikaro. Well, that is a dichui me'ikaro because you can't bring the korban in the morning. If you want to say that it was nifrash last night, last night it was nire. I could have brought it as a shlamim. This morning I can't bring it as anything. So again, how am I mafresh my korban pesach in a way that's kosher? You're right. The best time to be mafresh, according to Ben Beseira, is after chatzos. There's no problem of being mafresh throughout the day. Could you imagine now imagine an extra layer of logistics? Not only can you not bring the korbanos till chatzos, you can't even be mafresh the animal till chatzos. You're making it even worse. And Rav Papa Amar, afilu tema mi'urta, you can even do it the night before. Laila ein mechusar zman. Let's learn this last piece up and then we'll pause, which is as follows. How do we know that you can even pick out your korban the night before? Detani debei Rabbi Shmuel. Leil shmini nichnas l'dir lihisaser. We know that an animal doesn't count as meiser until it's shechtable, which is on the 8th day. Ucha de Rebbe Apturiki. The Rebbe Apturiki Rami Ksiv. He had two psukim that didn't agree with one another. One was Shivas Yomim Tachas Imo, that the animal has to stay, that the meiser animal has to stay with its mother for 7 days. Halai lachazi, but it would be fit at night. Uchsiv, another pasuk says there would only be an animal that's shaykh for meiser on the 8th day. Halai lachazi. So which one is it? Is the night of the 8th after day 7 in or out? Haketzat. So Laila liktusha v'yom lehartza, which is the precedent that we have over here, that Laila is for kedusha, and therefore we would be able to separate the korban pesach before, even the night before, and that would be considered acceptable. Tomorrow we'll dig into whether or not there's dichui by Ba'alei Chaim. We'll pause right here at Amar Le Reb Zera. Looking forward to Mir Hashem to learning again tomorrow night. Wishing you all a beautiful night.